Long ago in a distant land, Ayaku, the Dark Lord of Schopenschiffer, unleashed an evangelist campaign resulting in the teachings of a small sect being unspeakable. But a brave orator, Sinostisese, wielding some of the world's finest words, stepped forward to oppose his regime. This did not end well. Before his final words could be uttered, Ayaku tore out in total his tongue and flung Sinostisese into the dungeons for disobeying evangelical law. He used his nose as a tool to communicate with the pastures, and unto Schopenschiffer he staged a coup. The coup was successful, but he was ultimately killed as a final act by one of the old guards, and with it he became a martyr, fueling the revolution of the once niche religion into a dominant local power, with Sinostisese often being praised as a deity. Along with it brought a nearly indecipherable language, now routinely spoken through the noses of the followers of Sinostism, who shove rocks in their mouths as worship to their fallen hero. The language is known to its followers as but to the rest of the world it is better known as Sinostisese. I mean, it's not Sinostisese. Anyhow, that's the very true story of how this language came to be. Alright. I suppose I should probably explain how it works. Right. I am afraid that the production value for the rest of this video will be nowhere near that caliber, seeing as I only started this video a couple of days before the deadline. Oh dear. I will try my best to get through it as quickly as possible, but there's a lot to get through. Oh dear. This might be difficult to do. I don't have a very energetic voice, so feel free to jump around and just skip to the example at the end of this if you're impatient. With all that said, I will do my best to summarize, so without further ado, let's begin. Part 1. Grammar. This language features a lot of grammar, including person, number, definiteness, voice, tense and aspect, mood, grammatical gender, grammatical orientation. Here are all the different cases that there could be. There's a lot to get through, and I don't have much time, so I will instead just be covering some of the grammatical features that are a little bit more nuanced and a little bit strange, and also the ones that are the most funny. The two most complicated systems are certainly the gender system and the orientation system, so I shall cover those first. There are two primary genders, masculine and feminine. However, a noun may have no gender, also known as neuter or agender, or it may have both masculine and feminine, in which case it is known as bigender. Nouns may also fit into a third irregular category known as non-binary. There also exists a prominent irregular gender used specifically for attacking things and is known as attack helicopter. Helicopters are put into this category as they attack the air with their propellers. Nouns may also be gender fluid, in which case they sometimes act like masculine nouns and other times like feminine, and the rules are a bit complicated. And finally, nouns may also be androgynous, in which case people have given up figuring out which gender they are and just use whatever works. And French. But wait, that's not all, because verbs and adjectives still have to agree with a noun, and nouns may sometimes change the gender based off of other nouns in the sentence, usually the one before them. And while most words have the same gender as the noun that they are agreeing with, in which case they are known as cisgender, some words are transgender, in which case they take on the opposite gender. Masculine words have a feminine form, and vice versa, and neuter words have a bigender form, and vice versa. Irregular categories, including non-binary and attack helicopter, do not have this trait. Gender fluid and androgynous nouns may sometimes have this trait, but it is not entirely clear when it is actually in effect. Now you may be asking yourself, what exactly is the difference between a cis and a transgender? If the forms are opposite, aren't they still agreeing? Well, yes, but words that agree with them now agree in the opposite gender as well, not the gender of the original noun that the word is agreeing with. Also, words may become bigender if they are agreeing with more than one gender, and words that do not agree with anything are considered neuter or agender. It is worth noting that verbs that have been nominalized nominalized are almost never masculine or feminine and fall into one of the other categories, usually neuter or bigender, although there are plenty of non-binary and attack gendered verbs. And this is not where it ends, because there is another grammatical phenomenon known as grammatical orientation. That was not grammatical orientation. We're getting there, trust me. So word order is established by grammatical orientation. And, right, there's a lot to unpack here. So grammatical orientation can be split into two subcategories, repulsion and attraction. Words may either be attracted to each other, in which case they prefer to be next to another word, preferably after them, or they are repulsed by words, in which case they'd prefer to be away from the word, and try to have at least one word between them. Grammatical orientation is very much gender-based, although certain cases and numbers may change the grammatical gender and orientation of certain words. And each word, almost exclusively nouns and words derived from nouns, along with a few frequently used nominalized verbs, interact with each other based on gender and orientation. There are many kinds of grammatical orientation that a word can have, including heteroconnective, homoconnective, biconnective, panconnective, aconnective, demiconnective, masconnective, femconnective, mask-repulsed, fem-repulsed, disconnective, i.e. connection-repulsed, attack, and French. While words generally prefer to be after the word they are attracted to, including in cases where a word must be between them and another word due to the fact that the other word is being repulsed by them, they just as easily can appear before a word that they're attracted to, if grammatically necessary. And they actually prefer to be around two words that they are attracted to, if possible. And even if they are not attracted to another word, they still may change their place in a sentence in order to meet the requirements of the other word which is attracted to them. Meanwhile, the more connections a repulsed word has, the less satisfied the sentence is, and they require words that they are not repulsed by to be between them and the other words. For disconnective words, they can appear beside any other word as long as that word is not attracted to them. That's not all, because in instances where word order is ambiguous, there exists a hierarchy, not between nouns of the same gender, in which case if they are both attracted to each other, they exhibit free word order, but between different genders. Feminine always comes before bigender, which comes before androgynous and gender fluid, which comes before every other gender. And also attack gender comes before everything else by necessity. And then there's also French, which has to come after the rest of the sentence has already been uttered. A grammatical particle is used to separate words that would rather not be around another word when another word is not available, although this is rare. It is also used around attack gender words, as other genders never want to be adjacent to one of those. However, it is not used for French, as even that word does not want to be around the French words. While there is no pleasing every word, as long as the optimal number of orientation bonds are maintained, and in ambiguous instances hierarchy is maintained, then the sentence is grammatical. Note, however, that unlike many languages that exhibit extremely difficult grammar, those who speak this language are relatively forgiving and will understand if you cannot properly calculate all the words necessary, especially if you have a thought while you're talking mid-sentence. However, they do believe in carefully thinking over what you say before you say it, which may be why this language is so complicated in the first place. And I bet you're wondering what this does to pronouns, so let's move on to pronouns. There are no pronouns. Adjectives. Yeah, technically there are none of those either. Or at least no words that are by default adjectives. However, nouns and verbs may essentially become adjectives and adverbs if they agree with the word that they are describing. The adjective or adverb must agree in gender, unless it is transgender, in which case it must be the opposite, case, number, definiteness, tense, aspect, and mood, if applicable. Word order cannot help you determine adjectives or adverbs because, again, grammatical orientation and also grammatical gender is opposite for transgender adjectives. And adverbs, I keep forgetting adverbs. However, if a word is modifying a noun and is in a different case, then the word attaches itself as a suffix to the noun it's modifying, ignoring grammatical orientation and negating the previous word's orientation, although both genders will remain intact and affect words that apply specifically to them. Alright, let's speed run the rest of this. Conjunctions! They merge with a word. As a prefix, it also may modify its other grammatical segments. Did I forget to mention that this language is primarily a prefixing language? It is. Voice. Verbs may be active, as in I hit him, passive as in I was hit by him, aggressive as in I intentionally hit him, passive-aggressive as in I was intentionally hit by him, bouncy as in I hit and was hit by him, and voiceless as in he and I shared in a hitting action together. Tense and aspect. Verbs may be quite tense, very tense, somewhat tense, intense, pretense, false pretense, contense, competence, malcontents, incompetence, latent, sentence, importance, habitual tense, habitually tense, camping tense, normative tense, iterative aspect, alliterative aspect, alliterative aspect, fire aspect, and French aspect. Grammatical moods. There are two kinds. There are the moody moods, which include happy, sad, aggravated / angry, disgusted / sick, afraid / anxious, silly, excited, romantic, arrogant, critical, charitable, sentimental / nostalgic, cynical, proud or envious, neutral, uncertain or confused, swingy, and multi, along with set the mood, which is used in compound verbs when two moods are the same, so another mood does not have to be repeated. Content, stative, commutative, analytical, pathetic or pathetical, hypothetical, theoretical, hyperthetical, epenthetical, contrathetical, debitive, debative, supercritical, hypocritical, and French. Nouns may be indefinite, definite, finite, do-definite, don't definite, redefinite, or infinite. Grammatical number is pretty self-explanatory, although I should mention that they represent both ordinal and cardinal numbers. They also code for person, but also not really, because it's just normal and French. Blanket term for all of the other French terms in this language because of some kind of prejudice. I don't know, it might have something to do with that whole Dark Lord of Evangelism thing. You'd have to ask them, I don't make the rules. And finally, grammatical case. Alright, I would love to get into grammatical case in more detail, but we'd be here for longer than the rest of the video, so I will instead mention them all off in rapid succession. Here we have the uppercase, which is the most important noun in a sentence and is usually the subject, but not necessarily. The lowercase, which is a less important noun in the sentence, and is usually the indirect object, but not necessarily. Briefcase, which is a noun that is not super important to the sentence, and does not fit any of the other cases. Middle case, bookcase, suitcase, closed case, open case, contingent case, stringent case, just in case, pervasive case, instrumental case, possessive case, overly possessive case, underpossessive case, amputative case, collectative case, rentative case, ornative case, native case, exornative case, normative case, privative case, deprivative case, publicative case, primitive case, intuitive case, revertive case, avertive case, hative case, cold case, advocative case, vocative case, provocative case, antivocative case, elative case, ablative case, relative case, delative case, translative case, omnilative case, legislative case, relative case, sinistral case, dextral case, anti-sinistral case, anti-dextral case, egressive case, ingressive case, digressive case, aggressive case, aggressive case, regressive case, progressive case, circumventive case, ventive case, andative case, good dative case, bad dative case, really bad dative case, first dative case, secundative case, inundative case, post-dative case, calendative case, true dative case, mative case, diplomative case, debative case, narrative case, pejorative case, majorative case, injunctive case, objective case, productive case, constructive case, reproductive case, counterproductive case, deconstructive case, destructive case, creative case, alternative case, display case, and French. Also worth noting that there are no adpositions and you must use case for that function as well. Now you might be asking yourself, how is anyone supposed to remember all of that? But the truth is most cases are actually compounds, and actually this is the same for tense and mood. Broken into their constituent parts, there are 5 modifiers, which include no modifier, anti-modifier, amplified modifier, subdued modifier, and a compound modifier, in which case a word is both doing its own thing and doing the opposite thing. Also, the anti-modifier can fusionally merge with the amplified or the subdued modifier. Plus, there are a lot of compound cases, which means that fundamentally there are actually only 17 base cases. excluding French, of course. Moods are similar. There are actually only 10 fundamental moods and 9 fundamental tenses and aspects. Here are my very rudimentary notes on the subject. I will make something more polished eventually. This simplifies things a lot, but then we would take at least 15 grammatical morphemes just to get to certain words. Fortunately, this language is also partly fusional. Specifically, gender is tied to grammatical modifiers, case, definiteness, and mood, and voice is tied to tense and aspect. Plus, many commonly used compound moods and cases are also fusional in nature for many of the genders. And plus, certain genders just do not have distinct forms. Most of these fusional morphemes are monosyllabic, which would normally lead to ambiguity, but fortunately this language has a rich phonetic inventory, which brings me on to phonology! Warning: attempting to pronounce this language may result in undesirable side effects, including confusion, lightheadedness, postnasal drip, physical discomfort, irreparable bodily harm, concerned family, pain, and many other serious conditions. Please consult your doctor before attempting to pronounce this language. Here's the phonetic inventory. Let me explain. Here is an image that I took off of dylansong.tripod.com. As you can see, Sinostisese is pronounced through the nose. There are approximately 4 areas of articulation, roughly. There's the narial, which involves the front of the nose, the velopharyngeal or nasopharyngeal, which involves the back of the nose, the laryngeal, which includes the epiglottis, pharynx, and larynx, and the glottal, which involve the glottis as well as falsetto and false chords. Regarding false chords, not gonna lie, I originally thought that was the epiglottis until I realized that was something else. Nasopharyngeal consonants may be pronounced anywhere from the front to the back of the nasopharynx. They may include the velic passage, however they are most distinct from the epiglottis consonants in the front of the nasopharynx. And I admit I am not entirely sure if you can pronounce that without tonsils. I don't know, I have tonsils. The narial consonants may be pronounced either with the muscles in one's nose or by pinching the nose gently with one's fingers. It is hypothesized that the original speakers were able to do all of this with their nose muscles. However, I'm not actually sure this is possible. Sinostisese does not have vowels in the conventional sense, however it does have syllabic nasals, for which carry a lot of different tones and vocal modalities. 71 in fact. While this is not an exhaustive list, and there are lots of different tones within the different modalities, and certain different tones within the same modality have different names, to quickly read off the tones of voice, there are very high, high, flat, low, very low, perky, intrigued, unsure, curious, snuffed, angelic, guinea pig, aka erratic, erotic, erroric, straining, squealing, MC villager, MC pillager, lacking, posh, sad, bubbly, annoyed, angry, wheezing, gasping, hiccuping, gurgling, snarling, sniffing, snorting, ghastly, buzzing, bubbly buzzing, and baritone. I would go into these in more detail, but honestly I think I should just pronounce the language. Also, I marked the false chords as epiglottal because, again, I still don't fully know for sure what it is, but do your best to mimic me at home if you want. Just keep in mind you might hurt yourself. Okay, time to tackle this. The consonants are and the quote-unquote vowels are As you can see, perfectly normal. Part 3, Orthography. Actually, there is no orthography. I did not have a lot of time to make this. We can just say that they transmitted this language through word of mouth. They practiced their entire lives. They had nothing better to do in the church of Sinostisese or whatever. We'll just say, originally it was going to be a fusion of Mongolian and Korean, and also Russian, and maybe Japanese and Greek and Chinese. But, like, that stuff probably didn't exist back then. So, like, you know, we're just gonna, yeah. Next thing. Oh god, it's the translation. Okay, I'm not ready for this. Okay, give me a sec. Okay, I'm ready. I think I need a nice tonic after that.